This is Micornus Phokane, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. And I'm sure you would have seen that we have seen a lot of mushrooming of churches lately. We have seen churches actually in every corner. We have seen young people that we have seen that they've decided to open churches everywhere. Not a bad thing, of course, because if it is for right intentions. It's not a wrong. It's not wrong actually when churches are being opened everywhere, because the more we preach the gospel and spread it with the right intentions, the best and the good way to do. But I want to speak about this because there are reasons that are dodgy that we see people mushrooming churches because of. And that's the reason why we want to speak about that, so that we can warn you not to open a church because of wrong motives or wrong reasons. Because when you open a church because of wrong reasons, it just doesn't serve the purpose that God has intended a church to be serving. And that's one thing that we want to speak about today. Now, we're seeing a lot of churches mushrooming everywhere. And we want to speak about just common reasons why they are actually mushrooming everywhere. Number one is confusion about leaders by calling and leaders by appointment. And this is very important also that we speak about this, because there are many people that don't understand that there are those leaders that have been called by God, those preachers that are called by God, as of according to the book of Ephesians chapter 4 verse 11, that speaks about some are called as pastors, some are called as evangelists, some are called as apostles, some as prophets, and some as teachers as well. This is the fivefold ministry. And this is a calling of God, where God has called a man or a woman into these fivefold ministries. And this is what we call a leader by calling. Now we have got also, besides a leader by calling, we have got what we call a leader by appointment. Now, a leader by appointment is particularly whereby a leader by calling may be able to actually appoint a leader inside their own church and maybe ordain you as a pastor. You're not called by God, but you're ordained by a local church pastor, a visionary, who ordains you in a specific local church to become associate pastor. In that regard, remember that you are not called by God. You're called by this man or this woman who appoints you or ordain you in their own church to become an assistant pastor. Now, in this case, your pastoral anointing will be resemblance of the anointing from the visionary. Your pastoral anointing will actually connect from the visionary. It will flow from the cloak of the visionary. So therefore, you will actually be very powerful and remain powerful as long as you're submitting still under this visionary who has ordained you. And in this case, we have seen young men that become rebellious, and they fight with their spiritual fathers, they fight with their visionaries, they fight with their senior pastors. And because of that, and they don't want to stay and sit and submit and apologize and so on, therefore they rush and run away from the church, and they go and open their own church. And you see that this is now a young man who is not called by God, but he was actually an assistant pastor by appointment in a specific church. And he goes and opens a church purely because of rebellion. And I hope that you understand the difference there. Now, we are seeing a lot of churches opening under this scenario, whereby young ministers who were not called in the beginning, they were not being called by God. They've been appointed to become assistant pastors because they wanted, the pastor or the senior visionary wanted them to be part of what they are doing in the church, to assist in the church. But in this case now, because they cannot submit, there they go and they open their own church. That's one of those reasons that we see a lot of churches mushrooming around. Now, the second reason that you will always see is because people are now busy commercializing the gospel. They're actually making money out of the gospel. They're in it for money. And they are actually seeing a church as an easier way of making business. So we see people opening churches particularly with an intention of making money, because they want to prey on people on their heart-earned monies. They want to prey on the heart-earned monies of the people. They want to actually dupe people out of their heart-earned money through offerings and whatever type of ways of collecting monies from people. And they will sell also things that are not even godly, and they will call them anointed, called anointed oil, anointed water, anointed brooms, anointed towels, and so on. And all these things are being sold purely as a business. Why? Because people are in it for money. And they've opened the church purely for money reasons. And when you've opened the church purely for money reasons, it becomes something that is not godly. And you'll realize that most of the people actually don't become resilient in running a church. You're not sustainable. And most of the churches that have opened purely because of money are not sustainable. And we've seen them crumbling and falling and diminishing in the thin air, and most of them are not existing anymore. And this is the reason, because you are not foundationally started the church. It is purely because you wanted to make money. And that's one of the reasons why we see the churches mushrooming all over the place. Another common reason that we have seen churches mushrooming is hunger for positions and power. Hunger for the positions of power. Because people want to dominate. People want to have power. People want to be recognized. We have seen people that are hungry for power opening a church because they want to be looked up to. And that's the reason why we're starting to see a lot of positional titles that are coming through. And the positional titles that are now mushrooming right now, they are contributing as well towards this, because we have seen a lot of people that are hungry for power rushing into positional titles. And as they introduce themselves in certain titles, they feel very powerful. They feel very dominating. And that's what makes them, generally, some of them, to mushroom churches, because they want to be looked after and upon. And people love just to be called pastors, to be called a man of the cloth, to be called a prophet, to be called an apostle and a doctor, to be called a bishop, and so on. So people are going for all these titles purely because they want power, purely because they want positions, purely because they want respect and honor from the people. It's not that this man or woman is called by God. It's purely because of power mongering. And we want to say this is one of the reasons that we have seen commonly now, that people are mushrooming churches purely because of that as well. The other reason is lack of spirit of servanthood or submission. Lack of the spirit of submission. We have mentioned this a bit earlier, that majority of the people go and open churches because they cannot sit under anybody. They cannot be submissive to anybody. They don't want to stay under somebody's church and submit there. Now, because of lack of submission, we've seen everybody going out and opening their own churches. And this is very detrimental. This is bad. And we want to emphasize that there are those that are running their own churches, but they are not mature enough to be running a church. They should have been sitting somewhere. And I mean, it's sad to say some that are running churches could have been just an usher somewhere, not even a preacher, not even a pastor somewhere. But they should still be an usher, just on the level of their knowledge of the word, just on the level of their knowledge of the scriptures. And they are so ignorant to the extent that they should actually just be counselors in a specific church, or even ushering, as I said. But because of submission, lack of submission, we've seen people rushing and opening churches. And instead, those churches are not sustainable as well. And if not, closing very soon. We have seen them actually having a lot of scandals as well, because there's no backbone, there's no integrity, there's no maturity of the word, and there's no way that church can be sustainable. But we have seen churches mushrooming because of this reason. And we want to mention that these are some of the reasons that churches are mushroom all over the place. The other thing is misconception of many thinking running a church is only about the glamour of the pulpit. There are many people that are actually mongering for the pulpit, or hunger for the pulpit. And they think that gleam and glamour of standing on the pulpit and addressing people is the thing about church. But we want to emphasize that as Church Covenant Solutions, we want to mention the fact that pastors are not actually, their roles are not evolving only on the stage. They are not evolving only on the pulpit. In fact, the pastoring is beyond the pulpit. Pastoring is actually in the background. It's not much about the pulpit. The pulpit is just something that is more on the optics of the people, but there's much more that pastors are doing than just the pulpit. And that is the reason why people that were hungering for the pulpit and they've opened their own churches, they soon get tired as well, because they realize that the issue of the pulpit is not it, because there's a lot of burdens that you carry as a pastor, because there are a lot of things that you're just dealing with from the burdens of the people. So this is very important as well, that we warn young preachers, we warn young pastors, that it is not only about the pulpit, it's not only about the glamour of standing in front of people and addressing them. Pastoring is much deeper than that. And be careful of not just rushing and opening a church because you thought there's glamour. The other thing that makes churches to be mushrooming everywhere, and we see a lot of churches mushrooming everywhere, is because a church is the only platform that allow big titles like doctor without an education for it. It is actually the only platform. That's the only place where you'll find big titles of people without qualifying for it. We're having a lot of young ministers that don't even consider Bible college as important. We have seen young ministers that don't even believe that they must go to Bible school. And I want to urge you as a young man that please, it's very important to understand the word. It's very important also to qualify for it. Because it's very important that when you lead, you become qualified for your trade. Because people that are qualified become more confident in running. And the knowledge that you get from a Bible college cannot be compared. Actually, it's something very, very immensely important. And we want to emphasize as Church Governance Solutions that is very important to become learned of your trade, and go to Bible college or to theology school and make sure that you learn and know. And also, you learn also administration in Bible colleges, whereby they help you to administer a ministry in a very professional manner. And many churches are successful because those preachers have gone to Bible school to learn, and they are applying that knowledge in that particular church. And we want to urge young ministers to start driving themselves or motivating themselves to go to Bible colleges as well. I want to end up here today, your host, Micornus Phokane. We are the leaders of Church Governance Solutions. We are actually structuring the church once more by restoring godly order and in the house of the orderly God, because God is orderly, Bazalwane. And we want to emphasize that there must be an element of order in the church. There must be a way of making the church being orderly. And that's very important. And that's our job as Church Governance Solutions. Before we check out today, please remember our YouTube channel is under Young Men Empowerment Forum. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click notification button as well. Remember our Facebook page, Micornus Phokane, and Young Men Empowerment Forum as well. And also don't forget our Church Governance Solutions platform, which is our Facebook page as well. So please like it, follow it there, and make sure as well that you follow us on TikTok account under Micornus Phokane. The good Lord will bless you as you continue following us on these platforms. We're dealing with another topic tomorrow. May you be invited as well, and allow us to check out right here and say cheers for now.